other sons, and it was probably James the Less, as we call him. That's one explanation of how you handle this perpetual virginity of Mary with the children who are mentioned, both sisters and brothers of Jesus.
There is no trace of this apocryphal story to be found anywhere in the Christian canon. Yet, it is a tale that circulated throughout the Near East for centuries and would have been known to Arab Christians in the time and place where the Holy Book of Islam was written. The Quran tells of Joseph and Mary's marriage, of Joseph's children by a former wife, and the virgin birth of Jesus.
There are lots of women who are mentioned, so-and-so's wife, so-and-so's daughter, the queen of such and such a place. But Mary's the only one that's mentioned by name. So she has a very important role in the Quran and for Muslims. The story of the Annunciation in the Gospel of Luke is almost exactly paralleled in the 19th chapter of the Quran.
And the Spirit said, I am only a messenger from your Lord, sent to bestow a good son on you. How can I have a son, she said, when no man has touched me, nor am I sinful? He said, Thus it will be. Your Lord said, It is easy for me, and that we shall make him a sign for men and a blessing from us. This is the thing already decreed.
The fact that Mary is mentioned more by name in the Quran than the Bible, I don't think most Christians are aware of that. The fact that Muslims believe that Jesus was born of Mary, who's a virgin, that the virgin birth of Jesus is an article of faith for Muslims, and a similarity with Christians.
And so, even as this intriguing text was beginning to gain acceptance with second-century Christians, it was stories of Jesus, not his mother, that ultimately were chosen for inclusion in the Christian Bible.
Scholars of the Bible and of the ancient world hope to have, during their lifetime, some kind of a discovery of texts. They hope that there might be some new collection of materials that they might be able to look at.
Does ancient wisdom still lie hidden in the sands of the Middle East, waiting to be discovered?
In 1945, the story goes, an Arab peasant was traveling through the desert of Egypt, and he tripped over these large jugs in which were codices, books, these 13 codices that tell these stories of Jesus, these stories of the early Christians that are very different from most of what's preserved in our Bibles. And this story is actually quite engaging because the peasant was apparently involved in a blood feud. His father had been murdered, and he was chasing his father's murderer during the time in which he came across the codices. He then subsequently brought the codices home. He gave them to his mother. She threw them in the straw pile. Some of them were burned for heating, because what is more important when you're living at the edge of subsistence like that? Heat, or what may be absolutely priceless treasures from antiquity? Probably heat. And then the books get into the hands first of a priest and then of a scholar, because he realizes that as he's being chased for having now murdered his father's murderer, that people might very well be coming around to his house, and the books might be seen as contraband. And so they come into the hands of a priest, and then into the hands of a scholar, and then ultimately into the hands of American and European scholars who begin to translate them and publish them.
So the discovery of the Nag Hammadi Library is a dream that has come true for people. And as the early scholars glanced at the contents of these books, they were taken in particular by some titles like the Gospel according to Thomas, the Gospel according to Philip, the Gospel of the Egyptians, the Gospel of Truth. These were new Gospels, besides the New Testament Gospels. New Christian interpretations of Jesus that they could look at, and so they gravitated quickly toward these texts.
These were texts that not only were forbidden by leaders of the early church, they were never even considered for inclusion in the sacred canon. They were books written by a little-known, 2,000-year-old Christian sect who thrived for a time throughout the Roman Empire. They were called Gnostics, The church fathers said they were heretics.
The majority decides what is orthodox and what is heretical. The majority is orthodox, the minority is heretical. The majority goes to heaven, the minority goes to hell for their heresy.
The name Gnostic comes from the Greek word gnosis, which means knowledge.
Gnostics believed in the basic structure of the Christian faith in terms of Jesus Christ, but had a very different interpretation than what we would call the Orthodox view of Christianity.
The creation stories of Genesis, embraced by church leaders, were rejected by the Gnostics. For them, the physical world was a cosmic mistake, created by an evil, lesser God.
The Gnostics viewed this world as evil, and even the creator of this world as evil. So ultimately, Christian Gnostics identified the God of what we call the Old Testament as an evil God.
The Gnostics also held that salvation would come by means of an inner knowledge, not of the evil creator God, but of the transcendent God, the realm of light and truth.
Interestingly, we have some materials from Gnostics indicating that they could be just as evangelical as the next person. We have some sermons where Gnostics would go around and say, "Wake up, brother and sister. Wake up that God within. Wake up that light that is within. You're sleeping, you are ignorant, and it's time to wake up."
Perhaps it was their revolutionary ideas. Perhaps it was the growing strength of their movement. Whatever the reason, the writings of the Gnostics were among the books that were forbidden by the early church. One of the most intriguing is a text called the Gospel of Mary. It presents an entirely different Mary Magdalene, not the woman commonly thought of as a prostitute.
In the Gospel of Luke, when Luke introduces Mary Magdalene as a disciple of Jesus, in the preceding paragraph, he had told the story of the unnamed sinful woman who anointed the feet of Jesus. So later in the church tradition,